Yes, sir. You are live.
Okay. This is the meeting for the Cedar Mountain Town Council for January 25th, 2021. Welcome, everybody, to the meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll wait for Sam to do the flag this time. There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll now have a moment of silence where we can think about Dan, good thoughts precede good works. I like that. So we'll have a moment of silence now. Okay. All right, we're ready for the roll call. Carol?
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Here.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Here. First item or next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read through the minutes for December 28th, 2020, as well as January 11th, 2020?
Yes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Do we need any discussion? Is there anything that needs to be changed in the minutes? All right, we can have a vote on that.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch.
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Okay. Next, we have the citizens' opportunity to address the council. Do we have anyone, Sam, that's interested in
Yes, sir.
addressing the council?
We do have one, Claire Greisinger. I'll bring her in right now.
Very good. Claire, you are on mute. I don't know if you're talking. Can't see you.
Can
There
you
we
hear
go.
me now?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
ma'am.
Oh, I don't want to be on the video.
Well, we'd like to see if you want to join that way, but
Oh, no, I don't ever want to be on the video.
all right, either way is fine. So if you could state your name and address, and then be glad to hear what you have to say.
Okay, real short, Claire Greisinger, 40 Carriage Hill. And I just wanted to thank Loretta Hopper and her department for the great job that they did picking up our leaves. They always do a good job. I think this year was a little bit more challenging, at least our leaves were. They look dry on the top, and then underneath they're really damp and all smashed down from the cars running over them, and they look like mud, some of them. So I don't know what her crew did, but when they finished scooping them up, you couldn't tell that those leaves had even been there. So I appreciate their hard work. Also wanted to thank Adam. I can't pronounce his last name. The head of the water department. Anyway, Adam, for bringing to the attention of the council water board that storage tank agreement that he described as a horrible idea, and he is correct. That was signed in 2008. It was over $1 million at the end of 2018. And of course, the water fund's still paying. I don't know what the total is now, but Adam would certainly probably like to use this money for other needs that he's identified. So anyway, I hope our town attorneys found some way to stop these huge yearly costs, but I guess we'll find that out later. Anyway, I just wanted to thank Adam again for bringing this up to the council. Hopefully some of that money can go for some other needs that he has identified. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Claire. Appreciate
How
that.
do I get off of here? Click mute? Sam will get rid of me?
Yes, ma'am. I can put you back in the waiting room.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. That was good to hear. We can move on unless anybody has any comments. Any other citizen participation, Sam?
No, sir. No one
Okay.
else requested.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the state of the town for me to address, which I'd like to do now. And I think Sam's got a PowerPoint that's going to go along with this.
Yes, sir. If you're ready for that, I will go ahead and bring that up.
And I have some things written down. I did not commit them to memory, so I will be reading some things, but bear with me. Okay. So this is the state of the town address for, I guess, the year 2020. I'll start off by saying 2020 was a year that we'll never forget. It was a year, I want to say, of hand sanitizer and toilet paper, but there were some good things. We learned how to use Zoom, and for those with kids, we got to spend more quality time with them. And I guess that's good and bad, depending on how old your kids are. I, for one, got to have my college son come home and spend more time his freshman year with us than he did away from us, so that was nice. Some people got COVID pets. Some people picked up new COVID hobbies. And so even though we had a lot of issues, all was not lost with 2020, but we are glad it's over. I want to start the State of the Town address by thanking some important people. First, thanks to the town's employees for trying to keep things as normal as possible under rough circumstances. Thanks to the residents of Signal Mountain for being cooperative and dealing with changes that in the grand scheme of life are just temporary. Thanks to Boyd Veal, the town manager, and all the department heads at the town for your leadership over the course of the last year and even long before that. And thanks to Dan Landrum, whose leadership as mayor in 2020 was so important to our town. I also want to thank our prior town council for their service to the community, especially Bill Lusk, who came out of retirement for his second stint on the town council, and Cheryl Graham, who stepped in to replace a former council member who stepped down early. I also want to thank our citizen-led boards, commissions, and committees for all of their work for the town. Your involvement as volunteers really helps make this town great. So I'm now going to go through the town or the state of the town report. I'm going to hit highlights, and I encourage everybody listening to read the full report. It's not that long. It's about 17 pages, and it can be found on the town's website, and it gives you a more in-depth look at the state of the town. I'm not going to read it all because then we'd be here all night. So I'll start with our administration. That's the picture you see on the screen. Boyd Veal is the town manager. There's a little bit here, but you know, he's kind of in charge of everybody else. But the goal of the 2020-2021 budget was to maintain the current level of service without any new large capital expenditures. When that budget was put into place, it was, I think, in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So I think mission accomplished on that end. Also of note, Sam Gwen, who's here, our senior projects and compliance manager, became a certified municipal finance officer, joining Mr. Veal and our finance director, Carol White, in that designation. So moving on to the finance department. Carol White is the finance director. We started 2019-20 with a general fund balance of $4,163,994 and ended with a fund balance of $4,477,376. So we increased over the course of the year by $313,382, which is nice. Sales tax receipts exceeded our budget projections by $272,000. Town departments finished the year under budget, with expenditures being $590,000 below projections. So that's always good to hear. And we had a hall tax revenue, I guess a small bit that's ending, but we did have that exceeded projections by $152,000. So overall, a good year. Moving on to the police department. Mike Williams is our police. Oh, there we go. Clean audit. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. We had a report from our auditor who gave us a clean audit. Thank you for reminding me of that, Sam. So the police department, headed by Police Chief Mike Williams and his fine staff, they implemented an improved digital records management system during the year. It allowed them to better track calls for service, crime trends, criminal investigations, and things like that. I think this is there's a lot of impressive things about our department, but the Signal Mountain Police Department is the second smallest department in the state to be fully accredited by the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police and the Tennessee Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. And our well-trained police officers completed an average of 60 hours of training, which is 20 more than the state mandate. If you look at the full report that's on the town website, you can see all the areas of training that they experienced. And here's some photos of some of the other things that they did for our town residents. They helped with car seats, they did drive-by birthday parties, and all sorts of good things. And the department went paperless in 2020, so I love to hear that. Moving on to the fire department, Eric Mitchell is the fire chief, and our Signal Mountain Fire Department improved its town class rating in 2020, achieving a class rating of 2. We are one of only 1,600 departments out of over 50,000 departments with such a high rating, and only 348 departments in the nation have a higher class 1 rating. So that's really impressive for our fire department. The personnel completed 13,063 hours of training this year. And again, you can see the report for the details of that training. They do so much more than fight fires. There are emergency personnel. They take calls, where you might expect an ambulance. The fire department will be there. So they help in a lot of different ways. 17 of our Signal Mountain Fire Department personnel completed courses and programs that led to obtaining a state certification or state or national license. Moving on to the Building Codes Department. Again, Eric Mitchell, the fire chief, is in charge of that department. That department completed 2,194 building inspections and collected $101,598 in permit fees. They also completed a 4-month-long review and update process for the building codes. Next department is the Facilities Maintenance Department. Again, Eric Mitchell is in charge of that. He's a busy man. So you see some pictures of some of the things that they did. Some of the major products include carpeting in the town hall. They improved the security lighting at the town hall and put a new roof in. They put a new roof at the pool, upgraded the electrical components, and made some other upgrades at the pool. And they also put heaters in the basketball gym and redid the siding on some of the buildings. So a lot of work was going on to improve the facilities. The Public Works Department with Loretta Hopper, the Public Works Director. So in addition to our citizens thanking Loretta for her work, I'll tell you about what they did. We collected 3,683 tons of garbage and we collected 500 tons of recyclable materials that were diverted from landfills through our recycling center. And at one of the meetings we had, we asked Loretta, where this recycling goes, if it really gets recycling. And in fact, it does get recycled. The cardboard is recycled for, I guess, other paper uses. The plastic gets made into carpet and other resins, and the glass is recycled. So it all gets recycled. And, hopefully in some year, we'll invert those numbers and we'll have 500 tons of garbage and 3,600 tons of recycling. So we can, strive for that. We also chipped 2,277 tons of brush that was made available to the public as mulch. We collected 1,820 tons of leaves. During 2020, we completed the James Boulevard Rehabilitation Project. And we also had our transfer station inspected by TDEC, and there were no violations. The Stormwater Department, which is also headed by Ms. Hopper, completed a number of storm water projects. 6 major projects were contracted out, and several others were done in-house. There was also a TDEC inspection that revealed a few minor violations, but we are working to correct those, and we're thankful that there were no significant violations pointed out. So we did a good job overall. We are working on a 5-year capital improvements plan that we did with the help of MTAS. So a lot going on there. The Water Utility Department, which is headed by Adam Chronologer. I think I'm saying his name right. He's the Water Utility Director. The most notable action, I think, or from what I could tell, was that we changed out over 3,400 water meters in a period of 9 weeks, which was really important and improved the ability of that department to function. There are still 30 left to do. Those meters are large meters that have been ordered and are scheduled for replacement. So we're on track to finish that project. Also, they upgraded the SCADA program, which is an online system monitoring and control program that allows the director to monitor the system and make changes on his phone or on a computer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then next to the library department, we have Karen Glendenning, the librarian. You can see, I guess, a rendering of the new reading room there on the screen, which is the most exciting thing they've got going on right now. The reading room project or campaign was completed in 2020, and they're all set to start construction, hopefully in early 2021. They're going to do a new reading room in addition to adding an elevator to the library. If you're a patron of the library, you notice that it shut down when the pandemic hit in March, but they still were busy. They did a lot of work. They weeded out their collection and donated books and sold books. But they also did a lot of curbside or drive-by library work where they would bring out grab bags for kids. They'd make recommendations for you. You could come and pick up a book curbside. And I think the grab bags are pretty cool, where they'll put together some books for your kids with some craft ideas and things like that to keep the kids busy while they're quarantined at home. Also, they check out magazines to the public, and they recommend help people with ebooks and things like that. So anyway, the most exciting thing is the construction of the reading room, which hopefully will begin soon. Next to the Parks and Recreation Department, that's headed by Jared Thompson, the Parks and Recreation Director. You see a picture there of Driver Field. There is a local Parks and Recreation fund grant that has been completed. Construction is supposed to start in early 2021 to upgrade and repair a lot of the problems at Driver Field and Marion Field. They're behind the golf course. So I think that's going to be really nice for the public. The Parks and Recreation Department also was able to have all of their outdoor youth programs this year. The youth leagues, smaller seasons perhaps. They had a smaller number of kids participate, but they were able to get in all the seasons, except for the swim team, which the Chattanooga League shut down. So we weren't able to do that one. But they still served over 1,000 kids in their programs. And the big news for them is construction starting this year, hopefully for those 2 ball fields. Next is the Mountain Arts Community Center, which is fabulous. If you haven't been to the MAC, you need to go to the MAC. It's just amazing what the group of volunteers have done with that building. I used to use it for my mock trial practices when it was a dilapidated old building, and Angie Landrum and her crew have just done amazing work over there. But in 2020, in July, I guess, of 2020, the town entered into a lease of the facility to the Signal Mountain Elementary Preservation Fund to outsource the operations of the MAC. The town still owns the building and the property, but the Preservation Fund is operating the facility. Again, it's great work they've done. They were able to have a few events. They recorded some nightfall bands. They hosted the New Mountain Opry. They had some classes and things like that, but they had to shut down when COVID kicked in a little harder during the holidays, but hopefully they'll reopen to the public soon. Okay, that does it for all the departments. I know I went through that pretty quickly, but again, we have a report on the website, and I encourage everyone to read that and find out more depth about what the highlights of our town were. I'll just say in conclusion to 2020, good riddance. Hopefully we'll see a reduction in COVID numbers over the course of this year and the reopening of many of our facilities. We're looking forward to the renovation of the library reading room, to the renovation of Marion and Driver ball fields, and hopefully making good progress on our Old Town Sidewalk project. So mostly we look forward to better times in 2021 and maybe getting back to normal by the end of the year. So that's it. If anybody has any discussion, I welcome it at this time. All right.
Mayor, if I may, I'd just like to point out that the State of Town document will be on the website tomorrow. We haven't put it up yet to make sure that there weren't any last minute changes or anything. So now that we've been through this, we'll put that up tomorrow morning.
Okay, good deal. Okay, the next item on the
Charlie.
agenda. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. And you mentioned Angie and her work with SMEPF, but it should clearly be noted that Dick and Cheryl Graham have donated thousands of hours and personal funds and work and time to what's happening there. So
yeah, that's true. I know that if you want to find either of them on any given day, pretty much at any given time, you can go over.
And Alex.
And that's where they'll be. Yeah.
Alex too.
Yeah. So yeah, right. So yeah, thank you to them as well. I mean, Cheryl took me on a tour of that building, and it's really great. And I love the MAC, I really do. So, all right. Thank you, Dan. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the Wild Ridge planned unit development. Trying to find out where, do we have a, oh, here it is. Yeah. We have a resolution for that, but we also need to have a public hearing. The Planning Commission met to talk about this. Do I need to give a recap of what we talked about, I guess?
Sure.
Okay. The Wild Ridge project was started back in 2013, maybe.
Yes.
And they had a plan of all the phases. I think there were 8 to 10 phases that they planned to complete. And back when that plan was approved, the Planning Commission had recommended that the town manager should be able to make administrative or approve administrative changes to that plan, the construction plan, with an extension to the construction schedule that would not exceed the year 2040. And the reason for that was that it was an adventurous plan that Mr. Cruzy, and I guess, felt was probably not necessarily attainable, but it also depended on the market and how many houses he sold in each phase and when he could complete the next phase. So he wanted some extra time for his plan to be completed. And we agreed as a planning commission to allow him to go to the town manager to have that construction schedule increased or changed. Am I saying that well enough?
Yes, the action at the planning commission was a recommendation to the council to allow that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, back in 2013, for whatever reason, that recommendation never made it to the desk of the town council. And so it never got approved. And so here we are years later, and I guess the construction schedule ended and needs to be revised and extended. And so we had to have a meeting of the planning commission to approve again to extend that plan, or to give the town manager the authorization to extend the plan. So we had that meeting, the planning commission approved it unanimously, and now we're presenting it to the town council. Does anybody want to discuss this? Have any discussion about this?
I will just note, since we are technically in the public hearing phase, that we do have representatives from Wild Ridge available. If you have any questions for them, and we had no requests from the public to speak during the public hearing. During the Planning Commission's public hearing on this matter, we had one citizen speak, and it was in favor of the quality of the development and the work that the developer has done and the manner in which he has done it.
Right. Okay. If there's no further discussion and no public input, is that correct?
Other than the developers, they're the only ones that we have available if you like.
Okay. Well, if the developers wish to say something, they may. If they,
I think they're here to be available if you should have any need.
okay. All right. Well, seeing no interest in further discussion, let's go ahead and read the resolution and take a vote on it. So I'll read the resolution. It's a resolution of the Signal Mountain Town Council amending Resolution 2013-29 to authorize the town manager and designated staff to administratively approve changes to the phasing and construction schedule for the Wild Ridge at Fox Run planned unit development, including an extension of that construction schedule not to exceed the year 2040. That's 2040.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion on that? All right, we can have a vote.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing additional funds for ASA engineering. So we should hear from Boyd and Harry on that. I think Harry's had a chance to look at the contract, and y'all can tell us what's going on with that.
Sure. Some time ago, advised council that we had received a request for a change order with our contract. This is for the Old Town Sidewalk project. You'll know it has been going on for several years. In 2017, we awarded the contract for the engineering. Since then, the project has moved very slowly. The environmental phases of approval took a great deal of time, and ultimately now in 2021 we're able to move forward with that project. Also in that period of time, the state significantly changed and increased the requirements for design on these projects. So ultimately, just to walk through the basic evolution of this request and how we got here. Initially, the request from ASA was for an increase of $95,700 plus. Initially, their position was that when we rolled the other grant funds into this project, that we were increasing the scope and the actual amount of sidewalk that was being done. And that was not the case. And it was also not the case that this contract was based on a construction cost. It was based on the linear feet of sidewalk that was being put in, which had not changed. So once we worked through that, the request came down from 95,700 to 67,900 and change. That involved the remainder was the additional hours that are required because of the new standards for the state, as well as an increase in their average hourly rate at which those hours are calculated. So we've reviewed the contract, and our position was that there was not a provision in the contract that allowed them to increase the rate, while there was a provision that allowed some increases due to additional work. So we went through and looked at the additional hours, proposed a reduction to that, but primarily took exception to the increase in the hourly rate. When it was all said and done, they held firm on the number of hours required, and we held firm on the hourly rate, and that's what brings us to where we are now. So the process in working through this has brought us from over 95,000 to just under 47,000 in the request. And Loretta has confirmed that the standards have changed significantly. One example of something required that wasn't before is they have to do a profile drawing of every driveway that intersects this sidewalk project. And you think about Old Town and how many that is, that in and of itself is a great deal of work. So ultimately, we think this is a reasonable conclusion. Harry has reviewed the documents and concurred with our positions, and earlier today, I did forward a correction to the change order. As I said early on, the scope changes were dealt with, but I think when they did this last draft, they used a very early version to work from, and it inadvertently got back in there. So question Charlie raised earlier today kind of brought that to my attention, so I appreciate that. So that's how we got here, and I think Loretta is available if we have any other questions or anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does anybody have any questions? Looks like Dan's ready to speak.
Well, I just, thanks for your diligence on that. That hourly thing, that would be really hard to swallow, somebody just changing it because their rate changed when you'd contracted with them. And I trust staff, and in particular, you know, the focus that has gone on this. This has been one of the most highly examined projects that we've ever had, you know, for Loretta to know how much time has gone into it. It's still, you know, we choke on it a little bit because it's just another added increase, and you end up with the same thing, you hope, eventually. But I'd like to move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other discussion?
One thing I think that Boyd had mentioned to me that might be helpful to just provide some more color to is, you know, we started moving forward on this with ASA in 2017. And then Boyd, you had mentioned to me that environmental approvals, which sounds like a general term and like we may have been sitting on our hands for some time here in the 3 years since then, but environmental approvals meant a whole bunch of things that didn't even come to mind to me, and are why we've been delayed so much on this since 2017.
Yeah, one of the things, examples I give, because it just, you can't, there's no way you could fathom some of these things popping up. And, you know, the project was actually reviewed, and I don't know, the terminology would not be exact, so if not, I apologize, but it goes and is reviewed by Native American councils, Indian nations, to ensure that none of their lands or anything are affected and all that. So it went through that process, and then many others. And before it concluded, there was literally another Indian nation recognized. And it had to go back and be reviewed by them.
Wow.
Rightfully so. But again, it's just one of those things you can't imagine coming up and just further adding additional time to a process. So I can assure you that Loretta is sitting on go. When we submit something and are waiting for a reply and can move to the next phase once that reply is received, the delays are not at that juncture. And he does a really good job of staying on top of these things.
Thanks. Yeah, I think Loretta had mentioned a meeting or two ago where we stood, that the engineers hope to finish the next thing they're doing by this early part of the summer. So maybe in another month or so, she can give us an update, either herself or through you, Boyd, just to keep us informed of what's going on. And hopefully there won't be any other significant delays caused by the state or anybody else. All right, so Dan has moved to approve. We have a second on it. Are we ready to vote? Anybody have any other comments? All right, Carol, we can vote.
Certainly. Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Council Member Vicki Anderson,
Yes.
Council Member Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Council Member Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. You know, we never read the resolution. Do we need to read the resolution into the record?
Yes, please. If we didn't do that, we do need to read the caption anyway.
All right. I will read that. A resolution of the Signal Mountain Town Council authorizing additional funds in an amount not to exceed $47,000 for the contract with ASA Engineering and Consulting Incorporated for professional services associated with the Old Town Sidewalk Rehabilitation and ADA Compliance Project.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Next on the agenda is a very controversial topic, appointing Boyd Veal as proxy to the TPO Executive Board. I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution. A resolution appointing Boyd Veal as proxy for the town of Signal Mountain's Representative Charles Poss on the Chattanooga-Hamilton County, North Georgia Transportation Planning Organization. Anybody want to make a motion on that?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we need to have any discussion on this? Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Next item is a resolution authorizing additional funds in the amount of $3,120 for the contract with Lawson Electric Company for the replacement of light poles in the town hall complex due to additional materials and work being performed. Can you tell us what's going on with that, Boyd?
Sure. A while back, we identified, I think it was 3 light poles that needed to be replaced. This is something we do on a regular basis. It's amazing what woodpeckers can do to these things. So we identified 3 that needed to be replaced. The projected cost for that work was going to be over $10,000. So we did bid it out and got a bid from Lawson Electric, awarded that contract. And that was moving on as a project. A good bit after that, I think it was close to a couple of months later, we identified another one that was in serious need of repair. So we got a quote on that and basically just initiated that as a separate project. But what we didn't anticipate is ultimately all of that work was done in fairly short time frame, and then they ultimately build it all together. So in cases like this, if something like that happens, instead of having them pull something out and give any even appearance of impropriety, I would rather just come back to you guys, explain how that played out, and pull it into the authorization so that everything's covered and we're as solid as we can be on the payment.
Was the initial project part of the budget for the year 2020 or earlier than that? I don't know when all this took place.
It's in this current budget.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on this? Okay. Vote. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. That does it for the resolutions. Now we have a proposed ordinance amending sections 2-106 and 2-107 and creating a new section 2-108 of the Signal Mountain Town Code. This is the council member liaison section that we have discussed on several occasions. And has everybody had a chance to read through it? And does anybody have any questions or comments?
Mayor, if I may, one thing I had a question on, in the last meeting, there was consensus that this would be drafted using the language that you provided. So that's what we did. But since then, we've looked at it, and Sam caught the same thing that I did, and just want to, if we need to address it, do it on the front end, and that's in section 2-107. Subsection A, except as required by superior law, such as the case of the Planning Commission, a council member liaison is not a voting member, basically. The other current exception to that is for the library board. The state law, the wording on it could be construed either way, I think. It basically says that no more than one member of the governing body, being the town council, shall be appointed to the library board. It doesn't say no more than one may be appointed, but I think maybe that's what it meant. So I just, if we need to clarify that this also includes the library board, then we need to do that ahead of the first reading.
There was actually some question about that at the library board meeting that we had recently, and there was a kind of a back and forth. So I appreciate you looking at that point, because I wondered.
Yeah, if you'll recall, we did do a resolution for Vicky's appointment, as we do resolutions for the appointments to the Planning Commission, because they are actual members. So I don't know if we want to add except as required by superior law, such as the case of the Planning Commission, and in the case of the library board or something like that. But if we need to do that, we would need to do it now ahead of the first reading.
Okay. I have no problem with that. I would ask Harry for his thoughts on that. When you say such as the Planning Commission, you're not limiting yourself, of course, but I don't know that it's a problem to add something like after Planning Commission and / or the library board. What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, Charlie, Mayor, I think I see it as you do. Leaving it like it is doesn't preclude necessarily the library board or anything else, doesn't limit it to just the Planning Commission. But for clarification, it will be cleaner and clearer to add that language. I think that's completely up to what the council wants to do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I agree. I think adding it would be fine and add some clarity for those, especially who are wondering about the library board. So, I'm not sure the proper procedure here. Do we just say that this is amended to include after the words Planning Commission in 2-107A on the first line to add in and / or the library board? Or does anybody else have any other suggestions on how to do that?
And before you all got too much into the wording, I just wanted to mention if it needs to be, the very similar wording is in the last sentence of 2-106.
Oh, I see. Yeah. All right. Thanks for pointing that out, Sam.
I think just as a suggestion, if we say except as required by superior law, such as the case of the Planning Commission, and in the case of the library board. That way it's not attaching the library board to superior law. In case that, then that takes the question of whether or not that was their intent or not. Because in our library ordinance, it does state that a member of the council will be appointed as a voting member. So that would be my suggestion.
Thoughts, anyone? No thoughts. Okay. Harry, I'll ask for your thoughts. That sounds fine to me. I'm assuming that when you're talking about superior law that allows for the planning commission and the library, that you're not talking about the same superior law, obviously, but just generally superior law. I'm not sure if it matters really if we change it the way Boyd suggested or the way I did. So I'm fine either way.
I think as in the case of the planning commission and in the case of the library board is appropriate.
Okay. So such as the case of the planning commission and the case of the library board.
Such as the case of the planning commission and, yes, both at the end of 106 and their first part of subsection A of 107.
So if whoever makes motions, if you should make a motion, it just say as amended, I have the amendment.
Okay, thank you. All right. So does anyone want to make a motion to approve this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance as amended.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. We have
Wait, hold
on.
Just, sorry, Charlie. I should be faster on that. I'm going to vote against this, and I'll not belabor the point now, but I feel that this is a blunt instrument when we should be doing something a bit more subtle in coordination with what actually happens on the individual meetings, of which collectively we don't have great collective experience of how the different committees, perhaps operate. But I'm sure it's going to pass and everything will be fine. But I just want you guys to know why I'm voting against it. I feel like it's a blunt instrument, and that's why.
Oh, I appreciate that, Dan. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion or comments? All right, we can go ahead and vote on the ordinance as amended.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch. You muted.
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Oh, heck no.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Okay, the next item is an ordinance to amend section 2-9011 of the Signal Mountain Town Code so as to increase the number of members on the Public Library Board of Directors. Any discussion on this? I think we talked about it before. Is there anything you need to add, Vicki?
We just have some applicants to be on the board right now that are fabulous, and there's always opportunity for people to leave, and we just never know. So I think that Ms. Glendinning and the board would like to increase the number to 11 to first of all be able to utilize the talent that has been brought to them, and then also to ensure that that there's a good body of folks there to help make decisions. So that's the real reason. There was some discussion at the meeting about the clause about no more than 2 people from outside of the town limits, and we talked back and forth about that. But I think the board really settled on the same number, which was 2, not being outside of only 2 outside of the town limits to be on there. So, any questions?
I do have a question. Do you remember? It's been so long, but do you remember how many applicants we have and how many board positions we have open?
I want to say there were 2 more, because there were 2 openings and 4 applicants.
Okay, so if we do 11, we won't have more applicants than openings?
We will not. We will not have more applicants than we have openings.
Okay. All right.
If we're doing discussion now,
yeah.
Also, the library board is a working board, and I think this is a case where when you have more people involved, more gets done. And they're in a fundraising time as well, so hopefully it's a benevolent board as well, and it's important for those types of organizations to have members who want to participate.
Okay. Any other discussion?
As the library board moves forward with beginning the construction that they've been working so hard to get started, there will be some events, hopefully this summer, where we'll be able to invite the citizens in and have that shown off. It'll be really exciting. I'm very excited to be part of the library board. I have to say that I was for 2 years a librarian, and I was terrible at it. So I have such respect for anyone who wants to work in a library, because it is not an easy job. So what Councilman Landrum said is absolutely spot on. The more people there to help, the more can get done. It's a large job. So I think having more people will be a great help.
Okay. All right. Did we have a motion to approve?
Not yet.
All right.
Move to approve.
All right. I'll second. And can we have a vote?
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. All right. These will soon go to 11. I guess we have a second reading. After that, these will go to 11. All right. We were going to have a discussion about the tank maintenance contract with the water utility department. Is Adam joining us?
I think he is available. This was on for discussion and update because council asked Harry to look at it and then provide some information and update at this meeting. So that's primarily what this is. We do have a meeting scheduled later this week to work on it further, but Adam is available if we need him, but this was primarily for Harry to give you an update as requested.
Well, let's do that then. Harry, take it away.
Where we are, we can terminate these contracts by 90 days written notice, as long as the 90 days notice is given prior to the annual year. So we can certainly put an end to this contract, to these contracts. Boyd and Adam and I talked some, and we are approaching the point where, the way the contract's written, the first 11 years, the annual fee was established. Every 3 years after the first 11 years, you have discussions and you renegotiate the contract, basically. The first one of those should have been in 2019. So what I think the thing to do, and Boyd and I have talked some about this, is to ask the utility service company to sit down with us and see if we can renegotiate this contract. We can tell them that we terminate at the end of the next annual year, and then we're no longer in business with them. There may be a price at which we would want to continue business with them, and at which they would want to continue to get our business. But the current contract rates, given the change in our water system staff since 2008, is not a good deal for the town, we don't think. Now, that's not to say this was a bad contract when it was entered into. I don't know if it was or not, but things have changed, and probably really irrelevant whether it was a bad contract in 2008 or not. But I don't think we can just say this was a terrible contract from the get-go. It is not a good contract for us now. We have the ability to terminate it. And we think the thing to do is to try to sit down with them and see if we can renegotiate and strike a deal that's good for them and good for the town.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
So the 90-day notice for each annual renewal, is that by tank or is it over all contracts?
They are individual contracts. Contracts are each individual.
So each one has its own date by which we need to decide whether we're proceeding.
You're correct.
Okay.
But I think it's a good idea to sit down with them and, you know, we'll talk, we should talk to them about all of the contracts.
I assume they all would come to an end at different dates. So we're looking out for a lot of different 90-day periods that we have to keep up with.
I think that's true, but I don't know for sure. Boy, do you know?
Yeah, I think there are differences there, and there's also differences in what has been paid ahead for the upcoming work. So we need to make sure we're not leaving those funds on the table. So if we've completed work on one tank and we're in a good position, we can go ahead and pull out of that one. But if we've paid towards work that's yet to be done, and that's going to be another year, more than likely we're going to need to see that one through so that we don't lose the funds we've already paid in and then pull out of that one. So all of that will need to be coordinated. And the hope is that in an effort to maintain our business, maybe in a different format, they'll work with us on that. I know on the one that we're probably in a position to pull out of, we gave them verbal notice that that's likely what we would do. And they've assured us that the 90-day provision will not be an issue because they know we're in the middle of trying to review all of this. So I think we're in a position to work with them, and just a matter of optimizing the outcome, see where we can get.
Obviously, we need to make sure we know when that 90-day period is. And if we're going to be working with them, they might be agreeable to waive the 90-day provision for, while we discuss perhaps a resolution. So, but I think we need to identify those deadlines as soon as possible so we don't miss one. But I also was wondering, I mean, if we've paid money into the contract and we cancel it, and do we get any money back once we cancel it?
So far, their position has been that that's not the case. That's why we want to make sure that if we paid towards work, we look at when that work would be scheduled to be completed, and make sure that we get the work for the money that we have paid, even if that,
We get what we paid for.
right, even if that means we have to stay in a contract for a particular tank for a little bit longer, that would be better ultimately than losing half of the money that would have paid for that work. So we'll work through all that and make sure that that's, and Adam's looked through a good bit of that already. I think has a pretty good handle on it. So we're gonna, like I said, meet later this week and go over that in-house, and then we'll schedule something with them and sit down and see what we can work out.
Okay.
Are we talking with other water systems in the area, or with Tennessee American or anything, just to see how they view these kind of contracts and what, things like what they're paying when they get them painted?
Adam has a very good working relationship with, obviously, Tennessee American, but with some of the other area utilities as well. One of which director is former Tennessee American as well. So he and Adam have worked together for quite a while. And then he knows the others too. So he's put a good bit of time into looking at this contract, and at the same time, what alternatives are, and formulated his position that as of now, we need to change how we're doing this. So he has done a good bit of that.
Okay. Well, I would certainly recommend that Harry and Boyd and Adam work more on this and look into it further. So I don't think we need to have any more discussion about those details of the conversations they're having, other than what we've heard so far. I'm a little concerned about, attorney-client privilege type of stuff.
Right. We don't want to get into a lot of detail in an open forum ahead of discussions with the vendor either. But
Okay.
They're aware of our general position, and that's really all we've discussed. And the task now is to figure out how to improve.
Okay. Well, please, obviously make sure that we know when the deadlines are, and perhaps they would waive those while we're discussing things with them. All right. Anybody have any other comments? All right. Thanks, Harry.
Before we move on, if you don't mind, real quickly, Mayor, Sam, I've got a bad thunderstorm going over and my internet tends to go out. If I go out, I'll try to get right back in.
I'll keep an eye out for you or anyone else who might have the same issue.
Okay. All right. I think the next item is for discussion is the website upgrade. We had asked for an update, and look forward to hearing that.
I've asked Sam to kind of run down the main action item that you guys asked for was to engage citizens and get input on what they would like to see as we look towards updating and upgrading the website. So he's handled that. So I've asked him to kind of give you an update on the kind of information we received.
Sure. Yeah, we did put that out in the public. We sent out a couple email blasts. We put it out on social media a few different times, just trying to solicit input from the town. We weren't sure what kind of reaction we would get, what kind of response, but we've actually gotten a pretty good response from the public. We've received about 20 emails, and the number one thing that everyone, I think we had identified previously, but that everyone tends to talk about is an online payment option. So I definitely think that that's something that we want to be able to facilitate, and we're hopeful that maybe we can even get that done for in some form or fashion prior to the new website, at least for certain departments. I know Adam from the water department's looking into that right now, but so maybe that's something we can do. Another thing, a lot of people were asking for fillable forms. Things right now, a lot of our forms have to be printed off, filled out, and then either sent back in, emailed in. We do have some forms that are available on our website currently that are fillable, but we're trying to move to more of an online format. So some of the other things, interactive maps for parks and playgrounds, list of capital projects we have going on right now, sort of a way to look for fees. The responses came in, again, some of them very, very similar, but some asking about things that I would not have otherwise thought of. So, even in all of us, the department heads and everyone having their chance to kind of think about what we believe might be useful, it was great having that citizen input to see things that we may not have otherwise thought of. So I'm hopeful that we can take all those things and start moving in towards a more of a planning phase of actually talking to some various vendors and determining what we might be looking at to actually put this thing into motion. So we have identified a few prospective vendors, but that's still kind of preliminary as far as how deep we've gone into that. We're still working through this and at the staff level.
I have a question. So,
Sure.
and you mentioned what you mentioned at the end really mostly addresses my question. It seems to me that if I were going to redesign and redevelop my website, the first call I would make would be to a vendor who does this so that they can tell me what I need to do. It doesn't sound like we've done that. It sounds like we're figuring out what department heads want and maybe the public wants, and then we're going to go find a vendor. But I think it would be a good idea to get a vendor involved who does this, for a living, who can say, yeah, these are the things that you need to think about. These are the things that you need to ask your citizens or your department heads about. So talking about the website for a while, but like where are we in that process of actually getting somebody involved who can tell us what we need to do?
Sure. No, I understand that. And I do think, I think there may have been some question as to whether we were going to work with our current vendor or whether we were going to move in a new direction. So I'm not sure at what level that decision is made, but we can certainly start engaging other vendors and having those conversations.
And has this been budgeted? Or is this planned for the next budget?
There were funds, and Carol or Boyd, correct me if I'm wrong. I know there were some funds budgeted. I don't recall whether those were for website or email system.
We specifically budgeted to start the email transfer. I don't believe, Boyd, correct me, that we specifically budgeted for the website build.
I think that's correct. And when we first started discussing this with this council, we were looking at various web designs and trying to find one that looked like it would deliver what we thought our needs were. And then it was suggested that we kind of poll the citizenry to make sure that we were considering what their needs were. And so we did that. If we're going to engage a vendor for design and implementation and hosting and all of that, I frankly have no idea what type of cost we're looking at. But if there's a chance for it to exceed $10,000, then we would be putting this out for proposal and have to invite multiple vendors to make proposals and basically pitch what they can do for us and give us a price for that service. So I guess that's the next step in determining a general cost range and what the procurement requirements will be for that. If it's below that amount, then we can pretty much pick who we want. If not, we're constrained in how we approach it.
Yeah, I don't know how much it would cost, and I'm not saying that it's not a good idea to find out what the department heads and the citizens want, but at some point we gotta dive in the pool and get a vendor, settle on a vendor who can tell us, this is what you really need to find out before we go forward.
I think in a sense, it's like we don't know what we don't know too.
Yeah.
So I would be interested to hear the recommendations of somebody who has experience, developing an interactive, which I'm sure, there are people or companies around locally that that can work on that.
And there are companies that, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Right.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there are companies that specifically cater to municipal websites.
Mhm.
So they are going to have, I'm not sure about any local companies, but that would be more on a national level that could, would definitely have that sort of expertise.
Yeah.
I would be interested in knowing not just what's available, but what's gonna be available. Because if we're gonna make these changes, I think we need to look far ahead. So with technology changing as fast as it does, I think what's happening and what's going to be available is a question that might be just something to think about asking. I'm sure you have, but that's not.
The trend, and I'm not speaking specifically about municipal at all. I'm suspect of anything that's designed specifically for municipal, for a town of our size. They don't tend to scale well for what we do, those kinds of things. The trend in websites is to not hire a custom programmer and a fancy firm to set something up. The trend is to go with the kinds of sites that protect you because they have a huge staff that creates contact management, personal information management, pages that you can set up, and they're protecting you from all the injection kinds of things that you have to worry about on the backside. We, a town of our size, we're not going to have somebody that we could hire that would write that and do all that. That's just all they would do. It would be ridiculous. The more customizable sites that are out there now, you pick out a template. There's a few modifications that you can make on it. That's not what makes them awesome. We're not trying to make something that makes people go, wow, this site is awesome. We want to have a site that people see and go, wow, that's really useful. And the usefulness of the site is based on the friendliness of the site to the users. And I don't mean the citizens, I mean the department heads. And so the kinds of sites that are put out by, look at things like Squarespace and those kinds of companies that are around. They're publicly traded, they're strong companies. They've got, and having used several of those with multiple websites for years, pay sites and those kinds of things, when I got away from doing Joomla sites and WordPress sites and those kinds of things where I did all the coding and stuff myself and went with those kinds of things, my sites didn't look quite as good, but I didn't have to spend any more time on them anymore and started making money off of them, and they're able to modify. So I don't think we need to think that we have to go enterprise level on this kind of stuff. There are solutions that exist if you buy their highest end, because there's such a large market for it, they're expensive, but they're not as expensive if you go enterprise, or I'm guessing if you go with some kind of municipal thing. We can get a way better, friendlier site that works for staff, quickly. But there's where you hire somebody. You hire somebody to say, hey, set this up for us using this interface, and then we use it. I mean, that's what I hope we do.
I agree that that was kind of my thinking, Dan. It's just from personal experience. I helped create a website for the company I worked for 10 or 12 years ago. And it was this, we hired an outside firm. It was incredibly expensive. But the technology was such that we really needed that help. I mean, we needed all the programming. We needed some kind of software basically developed for us, not being very computer literate, where we could go in and make the changes we want. And then here recently, running for town council, I created a website in about 2 hours. And it was not great or anything, but I could have accepted payment on it. I could have done all this stuff very easily. It just took some of my time to do it. And I think, you know, were we to have some savvier people on staff, or you can do it as long as you don't need super new bells and whistles, which I don't think we need. They'll be new to us, like accepting payment, but I don't think they'll be new to any of these major website creation providers. I don't know what you can call those services that you have out there now. And they're super cheap too. So it's really just about the time and the effort of putting it together. And I really don't feel like we need, you know, a marketing person to choose the right color scheme or anything like that. We will see 99% of the improvement that our citizens and our staff desire by just implementing one of those solutions and having somebody build the pieces.
Right. So how do you go about determining who can do that? I mean, how can we, in a easy way, facilitate that? Do we need to, you know, look at some other surrounding municipalities' websites and see whose function we think sort of meets a similar needs that we have, and contact them and say, who'd you use?
Well, the similar sized towns to ours are using local government often. And I don't think we should use local government anymore for that.
I don't either.
Or they're
There
using
are a
the
couple-
municipal, I'm sorry, the other option is that they're using the companies that I was talking about, catered to municipal website.
Was it, Sam?
Before we go forward, were Andrew and Dan saying the same thing? I wasn't sure if y'all were recommending or suggesting the same thing or something different. It sounded different to me, but Andrew said he agreed. I don't know anything about, I'm not techie, so I don't know this stuff.
Yeah, I think we were saying
I
the
thought
exact
I was.
same thing. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I
I
think
can
if I-
tell, which shows you how untechy I am.
I'm not.
If I'm understanding you guys, you all are, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you all are suggesting that maybe instead of working with a company that caters to municipal or any sort of website, we work with a specific person, a web designer, to build
No.
our website. Is that
No, the
Okay.
opposite of that.
then? Maybe
think
then I apologize.
Yeah.
I
No,
thought that
but
was what you were suggesting.
You might need to hire someone. I'm just going to use Squarespace as an example. There are others, but everybody just look up Squarespace. Look at how it works. Look at their marketing. You guys don't have anybody on staff that I'm aware of that has, maybe you've got some folks that could do it, but that don't have the time to dedicate to it. You're probably going to need to hire someone for a short amount of time that uses a tool like Squarespace to build a site. And they're working with department heads to say, what do you want this to be? How do you want this to work? And then they teach the department heads, here's how you access it. Here's how on a Saturday or on a Thursday, you can quickly jump on and say, our garbage truck broke, you know? So, or make changes and put things up by departments and make it be dynamic. It's the people that are dynamic if they can use it. The more vertical you go, the more enterprise level you go, the less vertical you get. But what I don't know is if the stuff that Boyd and Sam at those kinds of companies, maybe they're that nimble now. Maybe they're that agile. I don't know that.
I would just say that from my recent experience in this, it's way easier than you probably think it. Sam, you could, I'm 90% certain you could, not that you have the time to do it, but you could create it and build it the way people needed.
Well, that's what I mean, I
It's
think
that
they have-
easy to use, and they're made for small, really for small business. And not that we're not a small business, but the functions we want, being able to collect payment, being able to post documents for customers to read, for our citizens to read. They're all the same, and it's built super easy to use. It's not expensive other than the time that you invest in it, and it's constant. Here's the other thing: those guys, they're in business to win, all those small business websites or everybody else's website, and they're always going to have the new feature too. So if we go and we have a designer build something, now we got to go back to the designer when we need some kind of new payment thing something we can't even envision right now. The new thing will be there. It'll be a page you click on and you add, and we'll be able to add it to our website.
Okay. So I agree with Susanna. Like, what's the next step?
Well, those are two different tracks you're talking about. And again, not knowing much about. Boyd, would you mind as a next step, would you mind sending us a link so that we could, as council members, could research some of the other companies, municipal companies that do websites?
Yes, sir.
That'd be good. And then in the meantime, everybody else, the next step for you guys is look at Squarespace. And then after that, type in Squarespace competitors in a Google search.
There you go. Yeah.
And then you'll see some of the other companies that do those kinds of things.
One of the things that, and it may not be an issue, but we have to address it as if it's an issue, is making sure of the level of security offered when we're, I get that businesses have to be concerned about that as well. But I would argue that none more so than a government entity. We have to ensure that, any information that we're able to exchange on our site is secure.
Yeah, may I address that for a moment?
Mm-hmm.
You don't put anything on your site that's not public. And one of the advantages of these companies is they don't interface with your local billing. One of the other big advantages is their security, because they are large. There's economy of scale that gives them the ability to have people who are making sure you don't have the kinds of problems that when you hear people have problems about sites being hacked and those kinds of things, those generally are custom written, and they've got these big custom backends that are set up for them. And we want a tiny backend. you want it to just be so we can use it. And but the component of that's important, and that's why we talked about this back in the budget, is the mail side, the communication side of it. That's why you want to go, in my opinion, with Gmail's government services for that. And you can have the guys from Chattanooga. They told us 2 years ago they'd come in here. I mean, we'd have to pay them, but they'll come in and do all the setup for us.
The guys from Chattanooga are who?
And the Chattanooga technical, I've got names, but I don't remember their names.
IT.
The folks, the IT department for the city. Huh?
Oh, the city's IT department.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the city's IT department. They said they would absolutely moonlight and come and help Signal Mountain set up their Gmail system.
I see. Okay.
And the Google's government services is big, and the Google folks will come. It'll be somebody with a big G, will come and check to make sure that you're doing things right. And that would make open records requests and all those kinds of things much easier, because they are set up for that kind of thing.
Which brings up something in my mind that we had talked about last meeting. Charlie had mentioned somebody to, I guess, more actively communicate via social media for the town. And I sort of had the thought of, well, maybe potentially from some of the savings of moving a lot of these programs or service agreements off of local government, could we save more even than we would need to hire our own IT person who manages that mail system, sets up that mail system, sets up the website, manages the website, and manages social media.
I appreciate what you're saying, Andrew, but I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's
I'm not
practical.
A lot of areas of expertise.
Yeah, I mean, my thought about a social media person would be, I mean, I remember the IT people that used to work at our law firm, and they wouldn't be who I'd pick to run our social media programs. But
I'm thinking of like two different people here too.
yeah, but I mean, I envision like some sort of person who was willing to work part-time. I'm sure there's plenty of people on the mountain that either would want to, have a second job, or maybe are stay-at-home parents who want to work, 20 hours a week or whatever it might take. I'm not sure it would take a ton of work, and you probably could do a lot of it from home. That's just
I'm sort of imagining somebody like that can work in a sort of consultative basis, somebody who knows about marketing and communications and public relations, who also could engage the services of someone in an IT to sort of facilitate the work, so that we're not putting it back on Boyd and putting it back on, department heads, but somebody who can really like kind of take ownership of these types of projects for us. And maybe you do it on a project type basis, but I know of myself included, not saying I want to do it, but there are people that are like me who have skill sets similar to me, who are not working full time, who would know how to do this kind of work, that you could hire them on a project basis. I don't think that's out of reach for us. I think we can, if we wanted to make that happen, I think we could figure out a way to do that.
I will tell you this. A few years ago, I had a 15-year-old mock trial student who could find anything, and I was just amazed. And I thought, if you want to hire somebody to find stuff, you don't need these professionals. You just get a high school kid come in there. They will download all kinds of stuff.
A high school kid who's trying to put something on his college resume honestly could do the website.
Yeah, that 15-year-old kid is now a senior in high school, getting ready to go to law school. So
Yeah.
a lot of years ago. Okay, a senior in college, I should say. All right. Well, I think we need to keep this discussion going. I think we should all look at Squarespace, like Dan suggested, and then Boyd can send us these companies that he was talking about, or that Sam was talking about. But so let's talk about it at our next meeting. Again, if we have a chance to look at that stuff, and just keep the conversation going.
I think it's we're in this unique. I feel like our town is sort of emerging from a sort of a small town kind of way of doing things, and things used to be kind of Mayberry and just real easy, and you just and we're sort of being dragged into the 21st century, and we gotta we need to stay on top of it. We don't want the 21st century eclipsing us, so that we're like vulnerable, or we're not servicing people, we're not giving the kind of customer service that taxpayers expect and are used to with every other way they interface on the web. And I think we're all smart enough collectively to figure this out. So.
Okay.
And I don't think it has to be frightfully expensive.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like it. It might not be, given what Andrew and Dan have mentioned. Okay, so let's.
I appreciate this conversation. I was just
Sorry.
going to say, I appreciate this conversation, because these are some things that we had not touched on before, with the possibility of doing it a different way. So we can definitely look into those different options.
All right, we'll keep the ball rolling, and we'll plan to talk about it again at the next meeting. All right, let's move on to the manager's report.
The main thing that I want to cover is something that I have moved. I went over with, or introduced to the council ahead of the election, and the state is working on and moving forward with the slope stabilization and drainage work and all that for the road coming up the mountain. Major project. They have undertaken the process of filing paperwork so that they can do the work on or adjacent to our properties because they're parks. They have some protection under the Federal Highway Safety Act or federal law. So they have to determine basically that there are no reasonable alternatives and that the impact will be minimal. Actually, they're required to establish one of those two things. And in this case, they kind of cover both. When you start off the mountain until you get to our city limits, all of the property downhill from the highway is on town property. Down to Shoal Creek, on the left-hand side, drop into Coolidge Park, and then Shoal Creek. And then after you pass Shoal Creek, off to the right-hand side, you're technically in what is still Rainbow Lake area that comes around the point and then meets the highway. So all of that's parkland, so they have to go through this process. They have done that and even put it out for a 21-day public comment period. Did not receive any comments, any opposition or anything. And it boils down to primarily the areas where new drainage will outlet, then that's going to be on our property. So what they are requesting is that the right of way basically jog out and go around that outlet point so that it's actually in the state right of way, thus it's their structure, their responsibility, and so forth. So it makes perfect sense and hopefully relieves us from a lot of the issue. As I'm sure all of you know, if you think about it, all of that property is pretty much straight up and down. It's not used for recreation. They're not access points to the areas or anything like that. But these changes would not hinder that if that were the case. So all of those things have to be considered. So they've completed that process and sent us the documents on it that show where all the outlets and all of that will be, and are basically asking for concurrence that the project will be of minimal impact on these properties.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
I assume that they have to go through TDEC just like anybody else would. It's not like they're diverting the stream, but they're creating some new ones probably. Certainly some wet weather conveyances are going to appear if they have new pipes coming off the side and coming down there.
From what I've seen on the plans, the new drainages, for instance, say below CVS, where you have the big ditch on the right-hand side, and then you drop off towards Shoal Creek on the left. There are already pipes that come under the road and do that, and all of the new ones appear to be going right beside those.
Okay.
And they're just going to be, I think, new and improved, probably a little larger. But I think they went to some length to not create new water flows. They're putting the improvements adjacent to where they already exist.
Not that we would, but what if we said no?
At this juncture, my understanding is the question is impact, and that we concur that it's going to have a minimal impact on the area, the property. And again, I think in an attempt to ensure that's why they're putting everything pretty much right back the way it is. But to answer your question, I'm not sure. Ultimately, I think the state has the ability to pursue obtaining the property just as we would if it got to that point through eminent domain or whatever.
Like for a stormwater issue, if we had something that had to be corrected.
Right. In most instances, as we've had to acquire right of way for the Shoal Creek Falls Bridge replacement, you know, we have that mechanism available, but that's the vast majority of the time. That's not how it transpires. You optimize the project to minimize the impact, and then work together to accomplish it.
For that unknown emergent property, the fifth risk, I think is what it's called sometimes, that are we signing anything that gives us greater liability if there are issues down the road?
That would be a question for Harry, and I just sent him all the documentation today. This all came in subsequent to our last meeting, so we're just going through it and spent a good bit of time on it today. And I didn't see anything that would indicate that. Again, at this point, I believe what we're concurring with is that the project has been designed so that it does minimize the impact, and that the properties won't be negatively impacted in terms of the ability to be used or accessed or anything like that. If anything, ultimately, I think the project, if these structures are contained within the state right of way, if anything, it would probably reduce our liability and exposure. But that's just my take at this juncture.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
So at that, I said, I've sent everything to Harry and for review. If you guys have any other questions or want to look over any of that, please let me know. If anything is different than what I've been able to glean at this point, we'll certainly come back to you on that. The only other thing I wanted to mention is kind of a heads up scenario and invite comment. As we've mentioned, the Marion and Driver Field projects are underway. Baseball and softball will, in fact, baseball may already be advertising for registrations, but those seasons will be just around the corner. With those fields unavailable, we're going to be stretched even more than we normally are. One of the field spaces that we routinely limit use of is Norris Field over on Signal Road. We tend to get complaints from neighbors if there's excessive use, and we will continue to try to minimize that. But in this situation, I don't know that we won't need to put a little more weight on that facility to help us get through this. So,
Hey, Boyd, could you use the field behind Thrasher? That's off Grayson.
the Cunningham, we do have.
It's, I don't know. It was actually named Sam Robinson Field. It's a soccer field.
Yeah, it is. We have access to that for practices and things like that. It can probably be used.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it gets used that much. So I thought maybe that would be a temporary solution.
Yeah, we do use that for a variety of things, but it is fairly limited in what you can do on it, except for practices because of what it is. But we'll use that. We'll use all the space we can in terms of practice space. But when it comes to actual games, Norris will actually obviously be for some of the younger ages, but it does have a diamond, and we're probably just going to have to use it some more. And unless you guys have any objection, we'll do that, but try to keep it at a minimum, keep an eye on it, and minimize impact.
I thought we couldn't do that.
We do use it for baseball.
I thought it had a rule that there couldn't be organized leagues on it.
No, the deed on it says that it will in something to the effect of in perpetuity, it will be used as a playground for children. And it is a large piece of property. There is playground equipment there. And for as long as I can remember, it's also been used as a playing field, as that is for children. And council, under normal circumstances, we have agreed to minimize its use to the younger kids. We spread out games, spaces between the games more there. So you don't have parking issues and things like that. So we make an effort to minimize the impact on the neighbors, but we do use it. But we may have to expand that use some.
Just
That
one.
was a big- Go ahead, Ben.
No, go Charlie.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the big problem is the parking, isn't it? The neighbors.
That's a big one.
Why it's not used.
The only thing I was going to say, this is tangential to that, but that may be one of the last big old style merry-go-rounds, big metal ones that you can swing so fast your centrifugal force hangs you off of it. I hope we don't take that out. Let's just keep repairing that thing forever. It's amazing.
I do wonder, is that field not a field that is used a lot by our lacrosse community?
No.
No, okay, because I think about them. I just want to make sure the field behind them, Thrasher. Okay.
Thrasher has a baseball diamond too down in their lower playground.
Okay.
I mean, it's barely existent, but I think
It's probably not safe for use.
Mhm.
When I was
Sit
in school,
on it, you'd have a
Let's say
rock
rock.
in your leg.
yeah, that's how it was when I was in school.
Yeah. Right. And the field behind Thrasher also, if it rains, it's a mess. It's almost as bad as Marion and Driver.
Okay.
But that's not ours though. That's the county's, right, Boyd?
Yes. The one Susanna was talking about off of Grayson on Cunningham is also counties, but we have an agreement with them to utilize it.
Okay.
So anyway, we will approach it the same way in terms of trying to minimize the impact on the neighbors, but the task at hand is a bit more challenging. So that may look a little different, but
Is there anything that can be done parking wise, like allowing folks to park? I don't know all the street names around there, but there's the Diamond, and then, way out in right field, there's all that grass, like allowing folks to park in the grass.
well, I mean, possibly if there weren't improvements made, we've worked through this a few times, and it's kind of a vicious cycle you go through in the discussion that, well, parking's the issue, so let's put in some more parking, and then folks don't want you to put any more parking in because that means more people will come, kind of thing. So I don't think we could do anything significant to improve the parking on an ongoing.
I just mean because
without
it's
getting some pushback.
one season, and we're not gonna. I don't mean pave. I'm not talking about paving anything. I'm talking about just allowing telling them,
Yeah,
look, we got a game.
Those are the things we'll have to do.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I meant by working to minimize the impact. Let them park in that outer field area, so they're not out on the road and things like that. So, but we'll just have to work through it and see. I just mainly wanted to give you guys a heads up because we do tend to get some pushback when we use it more than the norm, and that looks like we may have to do that, and we'll just do the best we can at it.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, communications and reports from the mayor and council. Anybody have anything? Okay, I participated, not really participated, I listened to the governor's call today about COVID, and I'll try to just be brief. They were talking about vaccines. Of course, the governor thinks we're doing a fantastic job. We obviously were the talk of the nation because at one point in December, Tennessee had the highest number of new COVID cases, I think, maybe in the world. But that has dropped 65% in the last month. And I think he said we went from 9,600 cases a day to 3,300 cases a day now. So they were talking about vaccines, and the biggest problem is that Tennessee feels like we're doing a great job in implementing the vaccination program, but the biggest problem is we don't have enough vaccines. They mentioned, I think that trying to see how many we've done. They said in Tennessee, 63% of the vaccines they've received have already been put into the arms of people. They're approaching 500,000 doses that they've implemented. 100,000 people are fully vaccinated, but we've received 7% of the vaccines that we need. So we need 10 million vaccines. We've received 700,000 vaccines. So essentially, that's it. There are no business restrictions in Tennessee. They just encourage responsibility among the business owners. But we're talking about vaccines at the beginning of the meeting, and our biggest problem doesn't seem to be our implementation of the vaccines. It's that we don't have enough. That's that. Anybody else have any updates? Any reports? Oh, sorry.
I mentioned earlier about the library board meeting, and so I think we covered it, but if there's any other questions, let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask about committees and boards. All right. So we have a tentative agenda for next time, and we can adjourn our meeting today.
Hold on.
Oh,
I would like to add a discussion item for next time's agenda.
okay.
And that's just around potentially amending section 21402, organization and membership of our recreation board. I don't want to keep y'all tonight on it. We can get into details next meeting, but I'd like to get it added as a discussion item. We hold the rec board to some extent to a different standard in that you can't be on a league, you can't be a league president or be on a league board and be on the rec board and help advise Parks and Rec, or not even parks, sorry, just recreation. We don't do that for any similar situation on any of our other boards that I'm aware of. I do understand, in the past, maybe a long time ago, we've had potentially some issues with certain sports feeling more represented when that happens, or other ones feeling less represented. I'll say this, I don't think in any recent time in history we've had all the seats filled either. So, but I would like to discuss that next time.
Okay, great. Anything else?
One of the things that I'll would like to put on for discussion that's a holdover. We were working with the tree board on an update to the municipal landscape ordinance. And that was right before the election, and then they made some additional revisions. So we have those, but at that time it was decided it would probably be better to wait till you guys were seated and had a little time to get acclimated, and then bring that back up. So I'd like to put that on for discussion, not action, so that we can kind of give you an intro as to what that is and how it evolved, and be ready to work on it thereafter.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Good night.